Hello, my name is Nadia Denton. I'm a film curator based in London. On behalf of CineDB Insights, I'm pleased to introduce this interview, which is part of the CineDB Africa Conversation Series, a collection of in-depth encounters with film professionals from across the African continent. CineDB Africa now has a new home on the e-portal of the Durban Film Art Institute. The initiative has received support from the Goethe Institute. Today, I am joined by Lara Souza, coordinator of the MiradasdDoc market based in Tenerife. It's wonderful to have you with us here today, Lara.
Hello, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
So tell us a few helpful facts about the MiradasdDoc market. What should documentary filmmakers know who may not already be aware that the market exists and even how they can engage and participate with it?
So MiradasdDoc is a documentary film festival and market in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands. And the main objective of the festival and the market is to build a stronger bridge between Latin America and Africa. When Miradas was created, the idea was to bring filmmakers from Africa and Latin America to this specific site. To the ones that don't know, Canary Islands is in Africa, basically, and has a long history related to Latin America. So for the last years, what we've been trying to do in the market is to bring new voices to the conversation and to open the space for filmmakers and producers to start to build stronger relations between these two continents through documentary. Yeah.
Brilliant. So can you tell us just a few quick facts? So for instance, how many days the market runs, typically what time of the year it is, roughly how many delegates, like if people have to get accreditation and like roughly how much that costs, just a few sort of top liners.
So MiradasdDoc market is a 4 days market, is generally in the latest days of January, beginning of February. And we normally open the accreditation only for filmmakers from the Canary Islands. What we do with the rest of the market is that we have 3 labs that are pitching labs. And we invite the filmmakers. There is an open call for each of the labs, and from there we decide on the decision maker panel according to the projects that we select. These 3 labs at Doc Sur, which is a lab for more advanced documentaries from Latin America, Africa, and Europe. But the European projects need to have a direct link to Africa or Latin America. Generally, is a lab to projects in production or in post-production. Then we have Afro-Latam, which is a lab for documentary projects that have a direct link between Latin America and Africa. Normally, it can be a theme link, a thematic link. For example, it's more common on the Latin American projects to be around Black identity and or related to the Afro diaspora. And the African projects can be also related directly to Latin America, or that such a production link, a co-production link or something like that. These projects normally are in an early stage of development, but we also accept different stages. And the other one is for animated documentaries from Latin America and Africa. And these ones can be in any stage and can be in any form: episodic, shorts, VR, XR, and feature films.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
And generally, what's the size of the market? So roughly how many attendees do you welcome and how much does it cost to participate?
We invite around 60 decision makers and between broadcasters, distributors, funds and festivals. So each year we change a bit the size of the market itself or the guests that we have, because we really try to build a strong connection between the guests and the filmmakers that we invite. So in roughly terms is a market of 200, 300 persons, yeah.
Okay, and so from what you're saying, Africa-based filmmakers can participate in some of the specific labs.
In all the labs.
Yeah. Okay, all of them. Okay, brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And they can also participate in the market as well.
They can participate in the market. They can have meetings with decision makers, but it's on their own expenses. Yeah. To the participants of the pitch labs and to the pitch forum, we cover the expenses, travel, accommodation, and daily expenses during the market. So that is the big difference.
Okay, brilliant. And you've referred to the fact of the links between Africa and Latin America, and obviously historically where Tenerife sits. I'm curious to find out more about example of particular African content or productions that you found have worked well in the Latin American region, or even types of genres that are very well received in that region.
From what we have received in the last years for the call applications, for example, call for applications, for example, for Afro-Latam, generally the stories that have a direct link are personal stories. Normally in documentary, this is the related to identity. It can be a more familiar identity. For example, 2 years ago, we had a project was Congo, Cuba, and was a project of a lady that the parents were military trained in Cuba to come back home and fight for the independence. We have dialogues between, for example, Mozambique and Brazil, or Cape Verde and Argentina. This more personal stories always are the ones that make this bridge more real, more documentary true in a certain way. And on the other side, what we understood that works really well in Latin America right now, because of all the Black narratives movement that they supporting right now in different countries, all the stories that are related to searching for identity, exposing conflicts of identity have been really successful and raise more interest among Latin American audiences, for sure. Yeah. The other thing that works really well in Latin America is stories that bring other sides of this one African identity. I think that is the main, I think, gap that maybe Latin America have around Africa, is this one idea of Africa. So all the African filmmakers that bring the texture to this reality. So it helps also their own search for identity. I think all of this really helps in many levels. Yeah.
Like what generally would you say is like the typical life cycle? What should filmmakers watching this sort of expect in terms of how their films will be engaged with by audiences in Latin America?
It really depends on my experience on the market. Tells me that Latin American broadcasters are really interested in bringing African voices to their channels. That's for sure. They're really searching for new voices that can bring complexity to what is the dialogue inside of each country. For example, in Chile, in Brazil, in Dominican Republic, where these dialogues around Blackness and around Black identity have been growing so much. We see that this broadcast, especially broadcasters and sometimes some distributors are really interested in commissioning acquisitions of this kind of content, for sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. And one of the things that I haven't touched on, which is quite critical, really, is the issue of language. So are we really talking about narratives in Spanish and Portuguese language?
Basically.
Yeah. Which I
Yeah.
think is important. And obviously it adds to the picture of the diversity and complexity of the continent. You know, it's not just English and French.
Yeah, but on the other side, we've been seeing a huge shift related to language in many ways. I think, especially in documentary, the scene is opening a lot to different languages, and I think it's part of a huge movement of rooting identities. So French and English don't appear anymore as a bigger need. But I think in documentary we see this shift of, okay, if the film is in Portuguese or is in Zulu, it doesn't matter, but it needs to be rooted in the why of the film, no?
That's really encouraging. Something else that I wanted to draw on your expertise about is financing. So what are some of the key sources that filmmakers should be aware of in terms of where they can get financing if they're making African cultural narratives?
Well, inside of the continent is always a bit more tricky, but I think the scene is also growing, and we are seeing new resources appearing. For example, Documentary Africa Doc is doing an amazing job on bringing new voices to the conversation and supporting new filmmakers specific in documentary. We internationally have the classic financiers as Bertha Fund, Sundance, but also there are these projects. These resources. They are doing bridges. For example, Steps in South Africa. They are bringing a new kind of production model that it's related to distribution, but as a production scheme where they bring money, they help you to raise other kind of resources. So we are seeing different kind of complementary funding schemes, which is really nice because since our ecosystem is so fragile in terms of resources, like seeing how we are managing to make it work with the United States kind of scheme complementing the European one. It's always good because we understand that the mix of that will make the films appear on the screens faster than usually is, which is normally 10 years. But yeah.
Brilliant. And on the subject of distribution, I know you also wear a producer's hat in your own right as a filmmaker. Can you share some tips or even suggestions about things that filmmakers should consider when making their documentaries that will better package them for distribution?
I think one of the most interesting things that I've been seeing through MiradasdDoc and really related to Latin America and Africa, it's the idea of impact campaigns, which bring closer the audience to us. And I think as a producer, it responds to a big question that we have as African filmmakers. Normally, we want to say something not only for the West or the North, but we want to say something, and we want to ourselves, and we want to talk to our people that generally are not the bigger audience that our films can achieve or can start to speak with. So for me, that is one of the bigger tools that I've been using to think about distribution in Mozambique or in the region as also a development tool. you know, since the beginning of the project, how to develop the film, speaking from the beginning with the audience, with the audience that I want. Yeah.
That's super. I mean, as someone who is an impact producer themselves, it's great to have that reflected and for you to reinforce that, really, because I think often it tends to be an afterthought and people still at times confuse it with marketing. So I just, on the issue of social impact, I wanted to ask you two things. One, if you could just give a description of what you would define social impact as, and even just one tip on what makes a really effective social impact campaign.
I always think that the more personal or the more rooted the film are in us as filmmakers, it will speak better to our communities. That is what I always say to the directors that I work with, is don't overthink on audience. Audience is you. You are first you are a person from the audience, and then you are a filmmaker. So think about what you want to say and what you want to add to a specific conversation that you've been following.
Brilliant. And a tip that you would give to make a really effective social impact campaign?
For me, the key is starting from the audience that you have closer to you, and then the bigger audience, because I think that is the thing that can block a filmmaker from not knowing who to speak with. And I always think that better to speak with someone that you really know than to someone that you don't know.
No, I understand what you mean. I mean, certainly I can reflect in terms of the campaigns that I've worked on. It's really good to think about audiences, less so much specific demographics, but their aspirations. What are their interests? Exactly. I mean, all of what you were saying earlier about, you know, making something that connects with the audience. I tend to think of the difference between social impact and, say, a normal commercial campaign is, to me, social impact about getting their heart. You want the heart of the audience. You want them to feel your film in such a way that when they leave that screen, they take the essence of that film with them and they become people who promote the film because they're so touched. You know, they talk to other people about it. So yeah, it's really helpful, I think, at times to talk at a bit more length about what social impact really means. To be able to see that as an outcome as opposed to the hard financials.
Sure, and to know that thinking about social impact can also help you to finance your film, because talking about social impact, it's involving other kind of resources that are not in the cinema landscape, and that can open from the beginning the possibilities of the film happening in the screen by complementing these cinema funds with other resources that are available for us in different kind of ecosystems.
Great. So before we wrap up, very much hoping that some of the filmmakers watching this feel encouraged and enthused, and certainly those who do have links in terms of the Portuguese, Spanish speaking communities are interested in participating in MiradasdDocs and indeed will apply. Can you just tell us in summary how people can go about applying to the labs, and also how they should best prepare in terms of attending the market or indeed international film markets?
Well, our calls normally open in June, July for the market, and during that time, I'm always available to answer questions, to go on phone calls. You just need to write to search for our website, get in touch with me. My email is there, and generally I'm quick on answering questions. It's a really basic kind of call. You need to prepare logline, synopsis, treatment, mood board, note of intention. We normally have a kind of open reading of the projects, and then we get in touch with the filmmakers. If we have some questions, we also dig on it. And yeah, it's a really familiar space, and I'm also available to give some advices to the shortlisted ones for the next year, to the next edition, and so on. So it's ongoing conversation. Yeah.
Wonderful. So that brings us to the end of this piece and conversation. I'm really pleased to have been able to speak with you today because, of course, everything is so much focused on the English-speaking and even French-speaking world. So it's helpful to remember that we do have these regional variances, and Spanish and Portuguese are also part of the African landscape. And indeed, to know about the opportunities for African creatives in Latin America.
Thank you so much. And it's always a pleasure to share ideas on our beautiful documentary landscape in Africa. Thank you.
Most definitely. Thank you so much.